The morning sun cast long shadows across Westbrook Academy's pristine walkways as 16-year-old Luna Williams stood at the entrance, her heart racing beneath her second-hand uniform. The golden rays caught the tiny scratches on her well-worn hearing aids, reminders of the years she'd spent learning to navigate a world of silence. Behind her, a sleek black car pulled away quietly, carrying her father, a man whose face rarely appeared in public despite running one of America's largest tech companies. They'd agreed to keep their connection private. "I want to make it on my own, Dad," she'd signed to him the night before, her movements confident despite her nervousness. Luna took a deep breath, clutching her worn backpack closer. Around her, students streamed past in groups, their laughter and chatter visible but silent to her. Their designer bags and perfectly styled hair made her feel even more out of place. She'd chosen to come here, she reminded herself, wanting to prove that a deaf black girl could thrive anywhere. Mrs. Lee, her interpreter, waited by the front office, but kind smile a small comfort in this sea of unfamiliar faces. As they walked to the principal's office, Luna couldn't help but notice how the other students stared. Some quickly looked away when caught, others whispered behind their hands, and a few boldly pointed at her signing. The school's hallways gleamed with wealth, trophy cases filled with golden awards, oil paintings of past graduates, and electronic bulletin boards announcing upcoming yacht club meetings. Luna's old public school could have funded a year's worth of programs with just one of those display cases. In homeroom, the teacher stumbled over Luna's introduction, clearly uncomfortable with having to accommodate a deaf student. "Class, this is, Luna. She's different, but we're happy to have her," the teacher managed, while Mrs. Lee's hands flew gracefully, translating the awkward words. A group of girls in the back row caught Luna's attention. Their matching pearl necklaces and perfectly coordinated accessories screamed elite clique. The leader, a girl with sharp eyes and an even sharper smile, studied Luna like she was an unwelcome intrusion in their carefully curated world. During break, Luna found a quiet corner in the library, pulling out her one copy of The Heart of Innovation, her father's book, published under a pen name. Few knew that the mysterious author who'd revolutionized accessible technology was actually a black man who'd built his empire from nothing, driven by his love for his deaf daughter. As she read, a paper airplane landed on her table. She opened it to find a crude drawing of her signing, with mocking words scrawled beneath. Luna's hands trembled slightly, but she straightened her shoulders and carefully folded the paper into her pocket. Evidence, her father had always taught her, was power. The day continued with a mix of curious stares and deliberate isolation. In AP Physics, Luna's favorite subject, she solved a complex problem faster than anyone else, earning surprised looks from her classmates. The teacher's eyebrows shot up, clearly reconsidering his initial doubts about having her in his advanced class. At lunch, Luna sat alone, watching the social dynamics unfold around her. The pearl necklace girls held court at their table, occasionally shooting glances her way and giggling. But Luna noticed something else too. Other students who seemed to exist on the fringes, watching her with something closer to interest than judgment. As the final bell rang, Luna caught a glimpse of her reflection in a classroom window. Her father's words from that morning came back to her. "Remember, butterfly, the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire." She smiled, adjusting her hearing aid with pride rather than shame. Let them stare. Let them whisper. They had no idea who she really was, not just as her father's daughter, but as herself. Brilliant, resilient, and ready to change their world. Walking to meet her father's car around the corner, Luna's mind was already working on ways to document everything she observed today. The casual discrimination, the systemic barriers, the subtle and not-so-subtle messages about who belonged and who didn't. One day, she used this experience to make sure other students like her wouldn't have to fight so hard just to learn. The black car appeared, and Luna slipped inside, finally letting out a long breath. Her father's hands moved quickly, asking about her day. "It's exactly what I expected," she signed back, "which means it's exactly where I need to be." The car pulled away from Westbrook Academy, carrying a girl who appeared powerless to those inside its walls but was anything but. Tomorrow would be another day, Another chance to prove that true strength often comes in unexpected packages. 2 weeks into her time at Westbrook Academy, Luna was learning that being ignored wasn't the worst thing that could happen to her. The whispers had turned into pointed laughs, the stares into deliberate shoulder bumps in the hallway. Her father's words about strength felt heavier with each passing day. During morning assembly, Luna sat near the back with Mrs. Lee, her interpreter. The Pearl Necklace Gang, now dubbed the Pearls by the rest of the school, had made it their mission to sit directly in front of them, constantly shifting to block Mrs. Lee's signing. Today's assembly was about the upcoming charity gala, and Luna couldn't catch half the information through their deliberately disruptive movements. In AP Physics, her usual sanctuary, things took an unexpected turn. The class was working on group projects, and no one would meet her eyes during partner selection. Even her exceptional grades couldn't overcome the social barrier her classmates had built. The teacher, rather than addressing the situation, simply assigned her to work with 2 students who couldn't hide their annoyance. "Just write down the numbers," one of her partners muttered, sliding the calculator across the table without looking at her. Luna caught the words on his lips, a skill she'd perfected over years of navigating a hearing world. She picked up the calculator, quickly spotting an error in their calculations that would have ruined the entire experiment. When she tried to point it out, they ignored her tapping on the table. Finally, she wrote it down on paper, pushing it toward them. The other partner rolled her eyes dramatically. "If you're so smart, why don't you just do it yourself?" she sneered, making sure Luna could read her lips clearly. During lunch, Luna found her usual common table occupied by the Pearls. Their leader, who everyone called Queen Pei, smiled sweetly as Luna approached. "Oh, sorry, we didn't hear you coming. Oh, wait." The group erupted in laughter as Luna turned away, her lunch tray trembling slightly in her hands. She ended up eating in the bathroom, something she promised herself she'd never do. As she sat there, she pulled out her phone and started typing notes about the day's events. Her father had always taught her that documentation was crucial. "Every challenge is a chance to create change," he'd signed to her at night when she was little. In history class, they were discussing the civil rights movement. Luna felt every eye on her when the teacher mentioned segregation. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, technically integrated into this prestigious school, yet facing barriers just as real as any physical wall. A small ray of hope appeared in art class. The new student, Ray, who'd arrived a week after her, chose to sit at her table. Unlike the others, he didn't seem bothered by her signing or her hearing aids. He even attempted to learn a few basic signs, though his clumsy fingers made them both laugh. After school, Luna stayed behind for the photography club meeting she'd signed up for. Photography had always been her escape. In a visual medium, everyone spoke her language. But when she arrived, the room was empty except for a note, "Meeting cancelled." Through the window, she could see the other members gathered at their usual spot in the courtyard. Walking to her father's car that day, Luna felt the weight of every dismissal, every snicker, every barrier. But she also felt something else stirring: determination. She pulled out her phone and started a new note. "Ideas for change at Westbrook Academy." In the car, her father noticed her expression before she even started signing. "Hard day?" his hands asked gently. Luna paused, then signed back. "Actually, I think I'm starting to see the bigger picture." She showed him her notes, watching his face shift from concern to understanding. That evening in her room, Luna created a private blog. She began documenting everything: the subtle discriminations, the not-so-subtle bullying, the systematic exclusion. But she also documented the small victories: solving that physics problem, making Ray smile with her clumsy attempt to teach him signing, the way some younger students had started waving at her in the halls. As she got ready for bed, Luna caught her reflection in the mirror. Her hearing aids gleamed in the soft lamplight, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled at her reflection. They thought she was powerless, voiceless. But Luna Williams was neither. She was gathering evidence, building a case, and preparing for a change that none of them saw coming. Before sleep, she added one final note to her blog. "They think my silence is weakness. They don't realize that I see everything, hear everything, in my own way." And soon, very soon, They'll learn that the quietest voice can sometimes make the loudest impact. The water now grew colder at Westbrook Academy, but nothing was as chilly as the calculated war Queen P and her group had launched against Luna. They'd moved beyond simple mockery into something more organized, more deliberate. Luna could feel it in the way they watched her, like predators studying their prey. One morning, Luna arrived to find her locker plastered with fake hearing aid advertisements. "Need help fitting in?" they mocked in bright colors. Other students hurried past, some giggling, others looking away uncomfortably. As Luna carefully took down each paper, she noticed Ray watching from across the hall, his face twisted with concern. In AP Physics, where Luna consistently scored the highest grades, Queen P's boyfriend, Trevor, started a whisper campaign. "She must be cheating," he told anyone who would listen. "How else could someone like her do better than us?" The words reached Luna through a network of sympathetic glances and warned looks from Ray. During lunch, Queen P orchestrated her boldest move yet. As Luna carried her tray across the cafeteria, a group of students suddenly shifted their chairs, creating an obstacle course. Luna managed to navigate through, but Queen P stuck out her designer boot at the last moment. Luna's tray clattered to the floor, her lunch spreading across the polished tiles. The cafeteria fell silent. Even Mrs. Lee, who usually stayed in the teacher's lounge, had witnessed it from the doorway. But before anyone could react, Luna did something unexpected. She smiled. Calmly, she pulled out her phone and took a photo of the scene, including Queen P's still extended foot. The smile never left her face as she signed to Mrs. Lee, "I'd like to report an incident." That afternoon, Queen P and her friends were called to the principal's office. They emerged looking confident, untouched. Luna learned why the next day. Their parents were all major donors to the school. The principal had apologized for the misunderstanding and promised to look into it. But Luna wasn't finished. That evening, in her father's home office, she showed him her documented evidence: photos, videos, written accounts, dates, times. Her father's eyes grew serious as he scrolled through her careful documentation. "You're sure about this?" he signed. Luna nodded. It was time. The next day, an anonymous article appeared on the school's online newspaper. It detailed the systematic bullying of disabled and minority students at Westbrook, complete with evidence. Though names were changed, everyone knew who was involved. The article went viral within hours. Queen P and Trevor were furious. During morning break, they cornered Luna in the library. "You think you're so clever," Queen P hissed, making sure Luna could read her lips. "Do you know who our parents are? Do you know what they could do to your family?" Luna's response was simple. She pulled out her phone, opened a business news app, and showed them the breaking headline: "Tech billionaire acquires majority shares in Preston Industries and Thomson Global." The color drained from their faces as they recognized the companies, their parents' companies. But Luna wasn't done. She opened her notebook and wrote, "I didn't want it to be about money or power. I wanted to be accepted for who I am. But you needed to learn that appearances can be deceiving. By the way, my father says hello." The school buzzed with the news for days. Queen P and Trevor's power crumbled as quickly as their parents' autonomy over their companies. But Luna took no pleasure in their downfall. Instead, she did something unexpected. She reached out. During a mandatory school assembly about bullying, Luna took the stage. With Mrs. Lee interpreting, she signed her story to the entire school. She talked about fear, about judgment, about the walls people build between themselves. But mostly, she talked about change and second chances. "We all have something to learn from each other," she signed, her movements graceful and strong. "My silence taught me to observe. My isolation taught me to understand. And now, maybe my story can teach us all how to be better." The assembly ended with an announcement. Westbrook Academy would be establishing a new scholarship program for disabled students, funded by an anonymous donor. Luna watched from the stage as Queen P sat in the audience, her pearl necklace noticeably absent, something different in her eyes. That afternoon, as Luna packed up her books, she found a note in her locker. In Queen P's elegant handwriting it read, "I'd like to learn sign language. Will you teach me?" Luna smiled, tucking the note into her pocket. Sometimes the biggest victories weren't about winning or losing. They were about changing hearts, one person at a time. As she walked to her father's car, she passed the school's motto etched in stone, "Knowledge is power." Below it, someone had taped a handwritten addition, "Kindness is stronger." The winter frost painted Westbrook Academy's windows as Luna walked through its halls, noticing how differently people looked at her now. The whispers hadn't stopped, but they changed. "Did you hear her father owns half the tech companies in the country? I heard she's actually a genius who developed special software for deaf people." Luna smiled to herself, remembering how just a few weeks ago, these same halls felt like a battlefield. Now, something was shifting. Queen P, or Rose as she preferred to be called now, had kept her word about learning sign language. Every Tuesday and Thursday during lunch, she'd sit with Luna, her perfectly manicured fingers stumbling through basic signs. In AP Physics, the change was even more noticeable. Trevor, who'd once led the cheating accusations, now awkwardly asked Luna for help with difficult problems. "I don't understand how you see the patterns so quickly," he admitted one day, actually looking her in the eyes for the first time. Luna pulled out her notebook and wrote, "When you can't hear the world, you learn to see it differently." Physics isn't just about formulas, it's about patterns, relationships that dance between forces, like sign language, but with numbers. The real surprise came during the Winter Science Fair preparations. Ms. Chen, the robotics club advisor, approached Luna with an interesting proposal. "We've heard about the software you helped develop with your father," she said, as Mrs. Lee interpreted. "Would you consider showcasing it at the fair?" Luna hesitated. She'd helped her father develop accessibility software since she was 12, but they'd always kept it private. Showcasing it meant stepping fully into the spotlight. That evening, she discussed it with her father over dinner. "The choice is yours, Butterfly," he signed, using his special nickname for her. But remember, sometimes the best way to break down walls is to show people what's possible. The next few weeks became a whirlwind of preparation. Luna decided to demonstrate how technology could bridge the gap between deaf and hearing students. She worked late into the night, coding, testing, and refining her presentation. Ray became her unofficial assistant, hauling equipment and learning enough sign language to help with basic communications. "You're going to blow their minds," he signed clumsily one afternoon, making Luna laugh at his mixed-up finger positions. Even the pearls, now minus their signature necklaces, got involved. Rose proved surprisingly good at organizing and promoting the event. "Consider it my way of making things right," she wrote in a note to Luna. The day of the science fair arrived with unexpected drama. The school's ancient electrical system couldn't handle the power requirements of all the projects. As other displays flickered and failed, Luna's years of working with limited resources paid off. Her backup battery system kept her demonstration running smoothly. Students, teachers, and parents gathered around her booth, watching in amazement as she demonstrated how her software could translate speech to sign language in real time, complete with facial expression animations. But the real showstopper was the reverse translation feature, taking sign language and converting it to spoken words. "This isn't just about helping deaf people communicate," Luna signed, her movements confident as Mrs. Lee voiced her words. "It's about building bridges, about helping people understand that different doesn't mean less." The crowd grew larger as Luna demonstrated how the software could be used in classrooms, at social events, even in emergency situations. Parents who'd once complained about having a deaf student in their children's classes now pressed forward with questions about availability and implementation. Near the end of the fair, Luna noticed a small group of younger students watching from the back. Among them was a girl with a cochlear implant, her eyes wide with wonder. Luna waved her forward, showing her how the software worked. The girl's hands shook with excitement as she signed, "You made this for us?" Luna nodded, then typed something into her computer. The software's voice spoke out clear and strong. "I made this for everyone who ever felt like they didn't belong." That evening, as the fair wound down, Principal Hartford approached Luna's booth. The same principal who'd once dismissed her complaints about bullying now stood awkwardly, waiting for Mrs. Lee to arrive and interpret. "Miss Williams," he began, "your demonstration today. It's opened our eyes to possibilities we never considered. Would you be willing to work with our technology department to implement this system throughout the school?" Luna pretended to consider it, though she'd prepared for this moment. She pulled out a proposal she'd written weeks ago, a comprehensive plan for making Westbrook Academy a model of inclusive education. As she packed up her equipment, Luna caught her reflection in the darkened window. The same hearing aids that had once drawn mockery now seemed different, not a symbol of weakness, but a badge of innovation and change. Ray helped her carry the last of her equipment to her father's car. "You know what's really cool?" he signed, his movements much smoother now. "You didn't just change the school, you changed us." Luna smiled, watching the lights of Westbrook Academy glow in the winter darkness. The war she fought wasn't just about being accepted, it was about creating a path for others to follow. As her father's car pulled away, she began drafting ideas for her next project. After all, Westbrook Academy was just the beginning. Spring brought new life to Westbrook Academy's campus, and with it came the school's biggest event of the year, the annual Legacy Gala. This year was different, though. Instead of just showcasing the school's achievements, the gala would focus on launching Luna's new inclusive education initiative. Luna stood in front of her mirror at home, adjusting her simple but elegant blue dress. Her father appeared in the reflection, his hands moving gracefully. "Ready to change the world," he signed, his eyes twinkling with pride. Luna took a deep breath and nodded. She'd been preparing for this moment for months. At school that morning, the excitement was palpable. Decorations transformed the usual stuffy halls into something magical. Rose, formerly Queen P, rushed up to Luna with panic in her eyes. "The presentation files aren't loading properly," she signed, her movements getting better each day. Luna smiled, remembering how this same girl had once mocked her signing. Together, they headed to the auditorium. The tech crew was indeed struggling with the presentation system. Luna connected her laptop, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she worked her magic. Within minutes, the screens came to life, displaying the promotional video for Bridge the Gap, her new educational technology initiative. "How do you always know exactly what to do?" Rose asked, watching in amazement. Luna wrote in her notebook, "When you spend your life finding ways around barriers, you learn to solve problems creatively." As guests began arriving that evening, Luna noticed how different everything felt from her first day at Westbrook. The same students who had once avoided her now proudly showed off their basic sign language skills to their parents. Ray stood by the entrance, confidently signing welcome messages to arriving guests. The presentation was scheduled for the middle of the event. Luna's stomach twisted with nerves as she watched the room fill with influential people, CEOs, education officials, and even a state senator. Her father sat quietly in the back, just another parent to most people in the room. Principal Hartford stepped up to the podium, his opening remarks now being simultaneously interpreted in sign language, a new standard at all school events. "Tonight," he announced, "we're not just celebrating our past. We're embracing a new future, thanks to an extraordinary student who taught us that our differences are actually our greatest strengths." Luna took the stage, Mrs. Lee beside her. The crowd fell silent as Luna began signing, her movements confident and graceful. "6 months ago, I walked into this school feeling invisible," Mrs. Lee voiced Luna's signs. "Today, I stand here not just visible, but heard, in my own way." She demonstrated the latest version of her software, now expanded to include real-time captioning, multi-language support, and educational tools designed for different learning styles. The audience gasped when she showed how the system could translate sign language into multiple spoken languages simultaneously. "But this isn't just about technology," Luna continued. "It's about changing how we see each other. Every student deserves to be heard, whether they speak with their voice, their hands, or their actions." Suddenly, the main display screen went black. Luna's heart stopped for a moment, but she didn't panic. Years of dealing with technical difficulties had taught her to always have a backup plan. She smoothly switched to her tablet, continuing without missing a beat. What happened next wasn't part of any plan. Rose stepped onto the stage, asking Luna if she could say something. Luna nodded, curious. Rose turned to the audience and began signing while speaking, something she'd been practicing in secret. "I used to be the girl who made Luna's life difficult," Rose admitted, her signs slightly shaky but determined. "I thought being different was something to fear. Luna showed me that being different is what makes us powerful." The audience sat in stunned silence for a moment before erupting in applause. Luna felt tears forming in her eyes but held them back. This was bigger than her now. It was about every student who'd ever felt out of place. After the presentation, people crowded around Luna's demo station. Business cards were pressed into her hands, promises of funding were made, and parents asked how they could get the program at their children's schools. In the midst of it all, Luna caught sight of the young girl with the cochlear implant from the science fair, now proudly showing her parents how the software worked. Near the end of the evening, Luna finally had a moment alone. She stepped out into the courtyard, looking up at the stars. Ray found her there, carrying 2 glasses of punch. "Your dad's getting mobbed by investors," he signed with one hand, grinning. Apparently, some billionaire tech genius just revealed his secret identity. Luna laughed, accepting the punch. Tomorrow, headlines would probably announce her father's public emergence, but tonight wasn't about money or fame. It was about a girl who turned her challenges into a revolution. Back inside, Luna watched as deaf and hearing students chatted together, some signing, some speaking, some using her software, all connecting. Principal Hartford was learning to sign "Thank you" from Mrs. Lee. Even Trevor was helping younger students practice the sign alphabet. As the gala wound down, Luna's father found her. "Proud of you, Butterfly," he signed. Luna smiled, signing back, "This is just the beginning." She looked around the room one last time, remembering the lonely girl who'd walked through these doors months ago. That girl never imagined she'd end up changing not just her school, but maybe the whole world of education. In her pocket, she felt her phone buzz with yet another email from an interested investor. But that could wait until tomorrow. Tonight was for celebrating how far they'd all come and dreaming about how far they could still go. The Monday after the Legacy Gala, Westbrook Academy felt different. News vans lined the street outside, reporters hoping to catch a glimpse of the deaf student who'd transformed a prestigious school and happened to be the daughter of one of the world's most mysterious tech billionaires. Luna slipped in through a side entrance, just as her father had taught her. Sometimes the best moves are the quiet ones, he'd always signed. Inside, she found Ray waiting with a stack of newspapers. The headlines ranged from "Tech Genius Reveals Identity" to "Student Revolutionizes Inclusive Education." "You're famous now," Ray signed, his movements smooth after months of practice. Luna shook her head and wrote in her notebook, "Fame isn't the goal. Change is." Still, she couldn't help but smile at one headline that read, "Westbrook Academy, from elite to inclusive." In the hallways, younger students approached her for autographs. Luna used these moments to teach them simple signs instead. By lunch, small groups of students were scattered around the cafeteria, practicing signing while using her app for guidance. Rose found Luna in the library during study period, her eyes red from crying. "My parents," she signed hesitantly. "They're furious about your father buying controlling shares in their company." Luna waited patiently as Rose struggled with the more complex signs. "But watching you forgive me after everything, it made me finally stand up to them." Luna pulled out her tablet and typed, "Sometimes the hardest changes are the ones we make within our families." Rose nodded, then showed Luna a college application she was working on for a program in disability advocacy and educational technology. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor, the state's education secretary. Luna watched from her AP Physics class as Principal Hartford nervously led the official through the halls. They stopped at several classrooms where Luna's software was being tested, observing how seamlessly deaf and hearing students now collaborated. During the last period, Luna was called to the conference room. She found not just the education secretary, but also representatives from 5 other school districts. They wanted to talk about implementing her program more widely. As Mrs. Lee interpreted, Luna felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about Westbrook anymore. But what about schools that can't afford the technology? One administrator asked. Luna smiled and pulled up a presentation she'd prepared for exactly this question. She'd already worked out a plan with her father to provide the software on a sliding scale, making it accessible to schools of all funding levels. After the meeting, Luna headed to the newspaper club room. Since her article about bullying had gone viral, she'd become a regular contributor, focusing on stories about inclusion and accessibility. Today's piece was different, though. She was writing about the unexpected friendship that had developed between her and Rose. As she typed, She remembered the cruel notes that used to appear in her locker. Now, she regularly found encouraging messages from younger students telling her how she'd inspired them to embrace their own differences or stand up for others. Trevor appeared in the doorway, awkwardly holding his physics textbook. "I know it's late notice," he signed slowly, "but would you mind helping me study for tomorrow's test?" Luna nodded, noting how he'd taken the time to learn to ask in sign language rather than just writing it down. They worked on physics problems until the sunset painted the library windows orange. As they packed up, Trevor hesitated, then signed, "My little cousin was born deaf. I was afraid of ending up like her. That's why I was so mean to you. But now, seeing all you've done..." Luna stopped him mid-sign and wrote, "Fear only wins if we let it." Walking to her father's car, Luna passed the school's construction crew. They were installing new visual announcement boards, part of the school's comprehensive accessibility upgrade. The worker in charge waved at her, proudly showing off the basic signs he'd learned from her app. In the car, her father was busy with phone calls, but he paused to ask about her day. Luna's hands flew excitedly as she told him about the education secretary's visit. "Ready for phase 2? He signed with a grin. Luna nodded. They'd already started working on expanding the software to help students with other disabilities. That evening, as Luna worked on her homework, she received an email from a deaf student in another state. The girl had read about Luna's story and wanted advice about attending a mainstream school. Luna spent an hour crafting a response, sharing not just encouragement but practical strategies she'd learned. Before bed, Luna added to her blog, no longer a record of bullying, but a guide for other students facing similar challenges. She wrote about the power of persistence, about turning adversity into opportunity, about the importance of forgiveness. Looking out her window at the city lights, Luna thought about how much had changed in just a few months. She'd arrived at Westbrook wanting to prove she could survive in their world. Instead, she'd helped create a new world, one where survival wasn't enough, where everyone had the chance to thrive. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rose. "Meeting tomorrow to plan the Accessibility Awareness Week." Luna smiled and signed a quick yes to her phone's camera, the app translating it to text. From enemies to allies, that was the kind of change that made all the struggles worth it. The end of the school year approached Westbrook Academy like a gentle spring breeze, carrying with it the scent of change and new beginnings. Luna stood at her locker, now decorated with encouraging notes and sign language charts, reflecting on how different everything felt from that first autumn day. Today was special, the official launch of the Bridge the Gap Foundation, created to help implement inclusive education technology in schools across the country. The morning assembly buzzed with excitement as students filed in, many wearing the foundation's logo, a butterfly breaking free from a digital cocoon. Principal Hartford opened the assembly, his signing now confident and natural alongside his speech. "When Luna Williams first walked through our doors, we saw only what made her different. Today, she's taught us to see how our differences make us stronger together." Luna took the stage, accompanied not just by Mrs. Lay, but by Rose and Ray, who'd both become skilled interpreters themselves. As Luna signed her speech, they alternated voicing her words, demonstrating how far they'd all come. "A few months ago, I was the girl who ate lunch alone in the bathroom," Luna signed, her movements graceful and strong. "Today, I stand here surrounded by friends who speak my language, both with their hands and their hearts. But this isn't just my story anymore." She clicked to the next slide, showing photos of the 20 schools that would be the first to receive the Foundation's technology grants. Among them was her old public school, where her journey had begun. "Every student deserves a voice," she continued, "whether they speak with their hands, their voices, or through technology. Today, we're not just launching a foundation, we're launching a movement." The presentation included video messages from deaf students around the country who'd been inspired by Luna's story. One girl signed about how she'd started a sign language club at her school. A boy shared how Luna's app had helped him communicate with his hearing grandparents for the first time. Trevor, once her biggest tormentor, now stood proudly with the Student Technology Committee, demonstrating how they'd adapted Luna's software for students with different needs. "We started with sign language," he explained, "but now we're developing modules for students with visual impairments, learning disabilities, and more." In the audience, Luna spotted the young girl with the cochlear implant who'd been at both the science fair and the gala. She was sitting with a group of new students, all wearing hearing aids or cochlear implants. They'd chosen Westbrook specifically because of the changes Luna had sparked. Rose took the stage next, her transformation from Queen P perhaps the most surprising of all. "Next year, I'll be attending college to study accessible technology development," she announced, signing as she spoke. Luna didn't just change our school, she changed our futures. The assembly concluded with a surprise. Principal Hartford unveiled a new school motto, carved in both English and ASL. "Different voices, shared vision." Below it hung a portrait of Luna and her father, their hands signing "Change starts with understanding." After the assembly, Luna found herself surrounded by reporters again. But this time, she had a team of student interpreters helping her communicate her message. The questions flew fast. What's next for the foundation? How many schools will you reach? What inspired you to forgive those who bullied you? Luna answered each question thoughtfully, but her favorite came from a young deaf reporter. "What would you tell other students who feel like outsiders?" Luna's response was simple but powerful. "Your difference is your strength. Don't wait for the world to understand you. Show them why they need your perspective." In her father's office that evening, they reviewed the foundation's plans. Schools across the country were reaching out, eager to become more inclusive. Luna's app had evolved into a comprehensive platform, with new features being suggested by users daily. Ready for the next challenge? Her father signed, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside was an invitation to speak at the United Nations about inclusive education. Luna smiled, remembering the girl who once hesitated to raise her hand in class. The next morning, Luna arrived early at Westbrook, just like she had on her first day. But now, students greeted her with waves and signs. The hallways that once felt like a battlefield had become a place of connection and growth. In AP Physics, she helped a new deaf student settle in, watching as classmates immediately started using the basic signs they'd learned. The girl's amazed expression reminded Luna of her own journey. During lunch, Luna sat at her usual table, now always full of students practicing signing, working on the app, or planning new foundation initiatives. Ray nudged her and pointed to the cafeteria entrance, where a tour group of prospective students included several with visible disabilities. They were looking around with hope rather than fear. As the day ended, Luna paused by her old bathroom hiding spot, now transformed into a quiet room for students who needed a peaceful space. On the wall hung a simple quote, "Your voice matters, however you choose to use it." Walking to her father's car, Luna passed groups of students signing to each other, using her app to communicate across languages and working together regardless of their differences. She remembered her father's words about butterflies and steel, about strength being forged in fire. The war she'd fought hadn't just been about being accepted, it had been about creating a world where acceptance wasn't necessary because difference was celebrated. As she slid into the car, her father signed, "Proud of you, butterfly." Luna smiled, signing back, "We're just getting started." And she was right. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. A beginning of a world where no student would have to fight the battles she had fought. A world where being different wasn't a barrier but a bridge. A world they were building, one sign, one smile, one change at a time.